One spirit, one voice, the sound of one who makes a choice. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of voices too. The sound of me singing with you, helping each other to make it through. This is the sound of voices too. This is the sound of voices too. This is the sound of voices three, singing together in harmony, surrendering to the mystery. This is the sound of voices three. This is the sound of voices three. This is the sound of all of us, singing with love and the will to trust. Leave the rest behind, it'll turn to dust. This is the sound of all of us. This is the sound of all of us. Ooh, ooh, This is the sound of one voice, one people, one voice, a song for every one of us. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of one voice.
Oh Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes Benz? My friends all drive Porsches, I must make amends. I work hard all my lifetime, no help from my friends. So oh Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes Benz? Oh Lord, won't you buy me a color TV? Dialing $4 is trying to find me. I wait for delivery each day until 3. So oh Lord, won't you buy me a color TV? Oh Lord, won't you buy me a night on the town? I'm counting on you, Lord. Please don't let me down. Prove that you love me and buy the next round. Oh Lord, won't you buy me a night on the town? Everybody now. Oh Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes Benz? My friends all drive Porsches, I must make amends. I work hard all my lifetime, no help from my friends. So oh Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes Benz?
Is this the little boy I carry? Is this the little girl at play? I don't remember growing older. When did that? When did she grow to be a beauty? When did he grow to be so tall? Wasn't it yesterday when they were small? Bum, ba-dum, bum. Sunrise. With happiness and tears.
The water is wide, I can't cross over, and neither have I wings to fly. Give me a boat that can carry two, and both shall row, my love and I. Though I may speak Come, Spirit, come, our hearts control, our spirits long to be made whole. Let inward love guide every deed. By this we live, and we are free.
Well, I am so glad I found you. I was out here on my own and couldn't find a single place where I feel at home. I was just amazed to see that you've been here so long. I'm grateful that you persevered. I wrote you all this song. I was thinking mango thoughts in a meatloaf town. The food for thought was all the same. It really brought me down. Nothing on the heavenly buffet line was satisfying my appetite for truth and right. I'm sitting here just fine. Everybody else seemed fine with blue jello and green peas, banana pudding, nothing spicy, no blintzes, no Vietnamese. I was craving jalapeno talk just to soothe my soul, saying unsurprising things was taking all my self-control. I am glad the talk is straight here, though a lot of the people are not. We got patriots and protesters, and that ain't all we got. Atheists and redneck Hindus, we've got pagan Buddhist Jews. Some of us like the Christian songs, some just believe the blues. I was thinking mango thoughts in this meatloaf town. And now my soul is on a roll. I got you folks all around. We got us a feast for the spirit. We got a feast for the mind. We speak the truth and walk in love. We remember to be kind. Well, that's what the ending would be if I was a sweet and earnest person.
Welcome to Holston Valley Unitarian Universalist Church. I am the Reverend Tiffany Sapp, and I am so glad we can connect during this time through the power of technology. Please be aware that this service is being live streamed and recorded, and that you can find subtitles in one of your menu options at the bottom of your screen. We're still posting the services to YouTube, and you are welcome to join us that way, but you will miss being able to participate in some of the interactive elements of our service. And let's start today with one of those elements. I have a question for you. Is it our differences or our similarities that make us stronger as a community? Give it some thought, and if you want to, share your answers in the chat. Our differences really run the gamut here, as Wendy's song just pointed out to us as you were coming in. Some of us are introverts and some of us are extroverts. Some of us lead with our heads, some with our hearts, some with our instincts. All of us are smart, but each in our own way, whether it's language or logic, people skills, artistic talent, spatial reasoning, we are all different. And yet, just by virtue of being here together this morning, we also share so many similarities, similar ethical principles, similar sources and resources for how we approach life. Today, we explore how all of these things weave together. And for the Dungeons and Dragons players with us today, I think you'll especially enjoy a metaphor that we will use to explore how our differences can work so well together. So let's begin our time together by inviting one of our resident Dungeons and Dragons fans to light the chalice.
I'm Sarah, and I'm happy to be here with you today as your service leader. Even though we aren't in person, we are together. We are part of a community that is bigger than the limits of geography. If you have a chalice or a candle that you would like to light with me, please join me now. If there were ever a time for a candle in the darkness, this would be it. Using a spark of hope, kindle the flame of love, ignite the light of peace, and feed the flame of justice. Feeding the flame of justice is a team effort, something we do together in our diverse community. In our Time for All Ages story, Reverend Tiffany explores what happens when the diversity that we need causes a little friction. This is her original story, A Song of Water and Sand.
This is a story about two sisters, Olivia and Peggy. As you listen to this story, think about which character you relate to more. You see, Olivia was full of imagination and lots of ideas. Olivia had so many ideas and so many dreams that she was often on to the new idea before she had even finished her previous idea. But Olivia was happy, and it was very good for her to be that way. Peggy, on the other hand, was full of responsibilities and plans. Peggy loved to set a goal and work steadily toward achieving it. Even though her friends would sometimes accuse Peggy of taking things too seriously, Peggy enjoyed that she used her time to build things that were meaningful to her. And so it was very good for Peggy to be this way. And so on an especially beautiful summer day, their mom packed up a big basket of goodies and took them to the beach. The moment they got there, Olivia dashed toward the shoreline with her favorite bucket and shovel. Sand was flying every which way as Olivia declared that she was going to build the best sandcastle that the world had ever seen. Peggy helped Mom set out the beach towels and was applying sunblock all over her body, making sure not to miss any spots. By the time she made it down to where Olivia was madly sculpting sand, it was quite a scene. So, Peggy began, "What are you making?" "It's a castle, can't you see?" Olivia enthused. And she told her sister all about the knights, lords, and ladies that lived in the castles and their plots and schemes and betrayals. There were even dragon queens and ice zombies in the story. Olivia wove such a dynamic tale with her words that Peggy could see it. She could feel it. She was entranced until a particularly high wave traveled up the sand and lapped at her feet, breaking the spell of the story. At that, Peggy's imagination turned to the ferocious incoming tides and her sister's very vulnerable sandcastle. In her mind, she could see the sand walls crumbling and her sister's high towers crashing down. She couldn't bear to imagine how disappointed her sister would be when the water washed away her beautiful creation. Filled with worry, Peggy immediately started to dig a wide moat around Olivia's castle. The sand that she dug out of the hole turned into a large wall between the moat and the castle to add even more protection. Olivia kept building her towers, adding a dragon pit, hunting seashells to decorate her castle, the entire time making up tragic princesses, brooding knights, and sneaky advisors to live in her castle, telling Peggy all about it as she went. Covered in salt water and sand, Peggy was starting to feel frustrated with Olivia. While Olivia played and spun stories, Peggy saw herself fighting a desperate battle against the elements to keep Olivia's castle safe. "Olivia," Peggy shouted, "the tides are coming in. Your castle is going to be ruined. Won't you help me?" Olivia came out of her fantasy world and looked at her sister, who was wet and dirty and maybe a little angry. She saw the great wall and the deep moat and the waves coming closer and closer and just didn't know what to say to her sister. As she opened her mouth to speak, the biggest wave yet came crashing through the moat and up over the wall, soaking Peggy, Olivia, and the castle. As the castle began to crumble, Olivia laughed in delight and Peggy stomped away. Olivia watched, transfixed, as the castle that she had worked so hard on returned to the ocean and the sand. A few minutes later, it was nothing but a mist-shaped lump of sand on the beach as the inevitable tide kept rolling in. Olivia gathered her building tools and returned to the beach towels, feeling the beginnings of the sunburn on her skin for the very first time. She guessed she should have used sunblock. Olivia sat down next to Peggy and thought about her words very carefully. "Are you mad at me?" she asked her sister. Peggy huffed. "Well, yeah, I guess I am. You were having all the fun and I was doing all the work. And I just knew that the waves were going to destroy your castle and you didn't do anything about it." Olivia put her hand on Peggy's shoulder. "I am so sorry, Peggy. I knew the castle was going to be destroyed. I was going to pretend that it was the dragons or the ice zombies, or maybe both. I don't know. That's just what happens to sand castles. They never last, no matter what we do." "All that work was for nothing then." Peggy slumped her shoulders and let out a frustrated breath. "But it wasn't," Olivia said. "It lasted way longer because of what you did. And you were there listening to my stories, which was so awesome. I'm sorry I didn't tell you that I didn't expect the castle to survive, or that I didn't appreciate how hard you were working. I thought you were just having fun playing in the sand like me." Peggy wiped her face with the towel and thought about what Olivia said. It was kind of funny how seriously she had taken it all. And the stories were really good, even if they did get cut off abruptly by the crashing waves. Which reminded her, "So how did it end?" Peggy asked. Olivia thought for a moment and then smiled as the story came to her. A great and compassionate queen, riding on the back of her dragon, saw the zombie hordes coming days before they made it to the castle. As the soldiers got ready for the invasion, the queen used deep earth dragon magic to dig protective moats and raise great walls around the castle. When the ice zombies came to the castle, there was a great battle. The queen could tell that her fortifications would not hold and began to evacuate the people of the city. She died tragically, saving her people, but the people escaped and would build a new castle one day, far away from the zombie horde. And they would never forget the courage and compassion of the Dragon Queen that gave them enough time to escape the doom that crashed over their castle walls like a wave of destruction. Peggy laughed and she declared, "All hail Queen Peggy, savior of the city," and then looked at her sister with renewed appreciation and love, seeing the sparkle in her eyes, her hair getting frizzy in the salt water, and the growing pinkness of her skin. Come on, Olivia, let's go get some sunblock on you before mom sees. And I think that when we're building a church and imagining the world that we want to live in, we need both the Olivias and the Peggys in our community to tell the stories that our community is built around and to build the stabilizing structures that will preserve our efforts. I wonder which of these characters do you relate to best? Share in the chat who you identify with. I imagine that many of us have both a little bit of Olivia and a little bit of Peggy on the inside. And I am so glad that the Olivias, the Peggys, and everyone in between are here to build our community together. In our musical offering today, Gary McConnell also celebrates the different types that it takes to build our community. I share her deepest wish that our circle grows ever wider.
May the circle grow ever wider, as in our faith we take a stand. May the ties grow ever stronger through our outstretched loving hands. Sisters, brothers, look at our faces. We are different and yet the same. We will find an understanding as we join in the circle again. May the circle grow ever wider, as in our faith we take a stand. May the ties grow ever stronger through our outstretched loving hands. We find strength in our spirit as many challenges drive us home. United, we can stand firm in the knowledge that we all belong. May the circle grow ever wider, as in our faith we take a stand. May the ties grow ever stronger through our outstretched loving hands. If you feel your spirit stifled, if you want to speak your mind, we will welcome your thoughts as sacred, and with us a safe place you'll find. May the circle grow ever wider, as in our place we take a stand. May the ties grow ever stronger through our outstretched loving hands, through our outstretched loving hands.
That was beautiful. I was privileged to actually be there when Gary was recording that. It was a lovely spring day or fall day on the porch. And wow, I missed that weather. So as we are well into the holiday season, I feel like there's a lot more to be joyful about and a lot more concerns whirling around in our heads too. Like our holiday plate is piled high with both our favorite and our least favorite foods all at once. Thank goodness that we can come to this community and share both our joys and our burdens. If you're with us in Zoom, I welcome you to type your joys and concerns in the chat box. I might end up reading some of what you type out loud, so please only share what you are comfortable with everyone knowing. If you're on YouTube, I'm not going to be able to see what you write on the YouTube chat. While you share your joys and concerns and your moments of awe in the chat, I'm going to light a candle for all of those affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, which is all of us, and some of us more than others. As of this morning, 5,266,667 people have died worldwide from COVID-19. We grieve with those who have lost their lives, and we hope for a better future, committing to do everything that we can to end this. Our hearts are heavy for those who are sick and grieving and medically vulnerable. Our hearts are heavy for those feeling the strain of separation and the stress of the holidays deeply and personally. Our hearts are joyful for people who are learning new ways to be in this world. And our hearts are joyful for moments of peace and rest and connection, both the ones that we create and the ones that just come to us like a gift. And we are connected in a community that holds these things for each other. Joy for the Christmas trees in Johnson City. Oh my gosh, go out to see those. Joy for a personal D&D game, being able to still play them using technology. Joy being here with friends for brunch and fellowship. Joy for our community in Northeast Tennessee. Concern for friends who are grieving. Joy for finding new connections and falling in love. Concern for students who have finals this week and are super stressed out. Concerns for people as they figure out their holiday traveling and what is safe. Joyful to have a compassionate and helpful brother caring for our home and our puppy while we travel. Joy that a nephew's firstborn will be arriving tomorrow. Yule presents, doctors and plans, and the complications that come with visiting. Concern for grandma that will have to go to a nursing home soon, which is gonna cause all sorts of problems, including being away from the people who speak her language and know her well. We have a lot going on as individuals and as a community. And as a community, we hold each other's sorrows with tenderness and hope and healing. We hold our community's joys like sparklers in the night, sharing our light everywhere. And we hold all of this and whatever remains unspoken in our hearts. We center our practice in loving kindness.
Our reading is an excerpt from an academic paper that Brian Ritchie wrote for Mount Tamalpais College while serving time in San Quentin State Prison, titled Dungeons and Dragons, a life-changing experience. This paper explores how playing Dungeons and Dragons, often referred to as just D&D, became a way to break some of the rigid racial barriers that often exist in prisons. Here's some background information on D&D. Dungeons and Dragons is a role-playing game where all the players get to make up their own character and then go on an adventure as that character. Each character has a race like a human, elf, dwarf, or an orc, and they each have a class that indicates their skills, strengths, and weaknesses, like a rogue, wizard, or fighter. The game is run by a dungeon master, which is often referred to as the DM. This person sets up the game experiences for the others, leading them through puzzles, fighting enemies, and making decisions that will drastically affect the outcome of the game. In Brian Ritchie's essay, he shares how his experiences as a Black man in the prison system and his growing love for this role-playing game changed not just his life, but the life of another inmate as well. About 6 years ago, my friends and I were starting a new D&D adventure at a prison in San Luis Obispo when someone walked up and asked to play. At first, we were hesitant because he, a white inmate, had clearly visible tattoos that indicated that he was at one time involved in violence against Black inmates. The DM pulled me aside and said, "I think we have an opportunity here. I believe he wants to make a change in his life, where he wouldn't be willing to play with you on the yard where everyone could see. If you're not cool with this, he's out. If a problem occurs between the two of you, he's out. But I think we should play the game because we have a chance to make a real difference in someone's life." Reluctantly, I agreed. The DM asked me to play a dwarf and asked the other guy to play an half-orc. In effect, the DM wanted me to play the racist and wanted the other guy to play someone whose only crime was being born. During the adventure, between in-game dialogue and sidebar conversations, we actually became good friends. We talked about how the segregation in prison made us feel and why we felt the way we did. Sometimes we even played out some of the scenarios we discussed in our game, but with a unique perspective of being in each other's shoes. Plus, he played a thief whose skills and cunning were needed to get us out of numerous sticky situations. I played a cleric whose moral fortitude kept us focused on completing our goals without sliding into spiritual abyss. We could not have succeeded without each other. Our experience did have a profound effect on his life. He gave up his old ways and made many friends of other races before his tragic death from heart complications. Near the end, when he knew it was time to say goodbye, he chose to spend his final weeks playing as much Dungeons and Dragons as possible.
At the beginning of our time together today, I asked you, is it our differences or our similarities that make us stronger as a community? You all overwhelmingly voted that it is our differences that make us stronger. The very you thing to do. Now, on one hand, I know that a lot of people, when they come into the Unitarian Universalist Church, say that they are here to find like-minded people, especially in regions like ours, where religious liberalism is a rarity. We gravitate towards each other because it feels so good to find a people and a place where we finally feel like we can belong. And then once we found our church home, we often find that our common values inspire us to do work together to help the world. On the other hand, if each of us were completely the same, then we would barely be functional as an organization. Like the sisters in our story this morning, we have different skills, different passions, and we need all the different types to make our beloved community work. So it's a very you thing to do, that the answer to my question wasn't an either or, but a both and. It is our similarities and our differences that make us strong and give us what we need to build the beloved community together. One of my favorite differences in Unitarian Universalism is our theological diversity. It's exciting to come into a spiritual community and know that I'm going to encounter people with radically different ideas about what is sacred, whether or not God exists, whether we exist before and after life, and how much agency an individual has. And that's really just the tip of the iceberg. We get to tackle so many big questions from so many different angles here. I think it can be a lot of fun. And of course, our similarities are connected to our vision for building the beloved community with the support of our 6 sources and our 7 principles. But what is this beloved community that can unite our vision? It's a term that theologians have been using ever since the focus of religious faith began shifting away from an otherworldly afterlife heaven and toward building heaven here on earth instead. It's a this world, here and now, vision of our greatest hopes and ideals for humanity to be realized, lived out as best we can, first in our spiritual communities, and then in the wider world as we expand our influence. A community whose primary focus is love. We build that love within our church by living by our covenant and by daring to connect even when it's hard, even when we disagree passionately. And then we build the beloved community beyond our church by working for justice. Justice is what love looks like when it is applied to the collective rather than the individual. Sometimes, though, when we hear that we as a community are working for justice, we might get stuck in a narrow vision of what that work for justice looks like. We may feel like if we don't have the capacity to show up for a protest, or if we don't have the money to give to the latest cause, that we're not making a contribution. Which is why I absolutely love applying the metaphor of a Dungeons and Dragons team, referred to as a party in the game, to our congregations when we're doing justice work. In his paper that Sarah read us an excerpt, Brian Ritchie points out that it is diversity in the Dungeons and Dragons party that brings on success in their quest. To be a successful party, you need someone who can fight, someone who can figure out puzzles, someone who has good social skills, and someone who can heal the party when everything goes wrong, which it inevitably will during a D&D campaign, which connects us to our need for beloved differences in our community. For a while on the internet, the term social justice warrior has been a derogatory term. But since warrior is one of the classes in the Dungeons and Dragons world, a lot of social justice oriented D&D nerds wrestled that term out of the control of the haters and claimed it for themselves. And that's where the fun began. Because truly not all of us are social justice warriors. Some of us play different roles. This recognition led to an imaginative expansion about how we each do our part for social justice in different ways, each with our own gifts. If you're not a social justice warrior, then maybe you're a social justice rogue or a social justice wizard. A successful party will be well-rounded. A team full of warriors won't make it very far. So the metaphor has been stretched out in some really cool ways where people can identify how they do their part, but each in different ways when we're building the beloved community. And I just had to play with this, thinking about my friends, family, and colleagues as part of my own social justice Dungeons and Dragons team. I hope it will help you think of who you are connected with in this work of building the beloved community and what role you often take in your group of friends. You won't recognize the faces in these slides, but you just might recognize the roles people play in your relationships and in our church group dynamics. So this is the social justice cleric. You remember how I said that every team needs a healer when everything goes wrong? Well, we might not need someone to recover our hit points, but we do need people to point us to hope when things feel hopeless, and to offer us spiritual and emotional healing through the power of empathy. The harder life gets, the more important these bringers of healing and hope become. When I think of what the caring team does and the way they do their best to keep track of all of us and what we need, I think of the social justice clerics. I am so grateful for their work that is often done behind the scenes. So contemplate for a moment. Who are the social justice clerics in your life? Who helps you find the strength to do the work you are called to do? Let's pause for a second and think about that. Who are the social justice clerics in your life? The social justice bard uses creativity in a variety of ways to support the community's work. Poetry, music, storytelling, art, those memes that made us laugh so hard last week, they energize us, and sometimes they make us think and teach us too. Since I've been here, I've seen how rich we are with singers, songwriters, and performers. Some of you all are out there writing original social justice-oriented music. And we've got our theater friends, both in the Time for All Ages stories and in the dramatic storytelling we did last month as we told the history of this place. And of course, our annual Festivals of Light, which is happening next week, is a beautiful and inspiring creative endeavor brought to us by some of our social justice bards. These creative ventures connect our hearts to what is actually going on around us, inspiring us to care about what's going on in the world. Who are the social justice bards in your life and in your community? How do you use creativity yourself in your social justice work? Who are the social justice bards in our community? Would you like to be one? The social justice Druid reminds us that humans are only part of the beloved community, that we are interconnected with the natural world and have a responsibility to the plants, animals, waterways, and even the air that we breathe. They remind us to act in a way that honors the natural world's sacred worth and our interconnectivity, and to draw strength from those connections. Our social justice team is making environmental issues their focal point this spring, and I'm so glad they are. Who are the social justice druids in your life? Or how do you honor the natural world as an intrinsic part of our beloved community? Who are the social justice druids in our community? The social justice wizard gets their power through study and then applies what they have learned in skillful ways. At this time, where talking heads have relativized everything from science to ethics, we need part of our team to be those who have studied and who can see through the spin, who live out the principle that knowledge is power and then use that power for justice. Those who will teach us if we have the wisdom to listen and learn. When I was at the last social justice team meeting, I was awestruck during check-in time. Instead of just talking about how our week had gone, everyone started sharing the ways they had been educating themselves about racial justice issues. The workshops, videos, books that they cited were a treasure trove of information. And I thought to myself, this is what being a social justice wizard is like, seeking out the knowledge and then figuring out how to apply it. Who are the social justice wizards in your life? Or how do you use the power of knowledge to make the world a better place for all of us? Who are the social justice wizards here? And then, of course, there is the social justice warrior, the people who gather their courage and show up both in real life and online. Sometimes these are people at protests. Sometimes these are people who are willing to have really uncomfortable conversations. Being a warrior does not mean that you're violent or even that you're overt about your anger, but it does mean that you find your courage and do the really hard things. Who are the social justice warriors in your life? And what is your courage asking you to do? Who are our social justice warriors? And finally, no matter what role we play, we need to realize the importance of the experienced campaigner. Regardless of the composition of your party, you might find yourself in big trouble if every player on your team is brand new, still learning what works and doesn't work in game. We really benefit from the voices of experience, both in game and in our real life social justice work. These folks here on this slide are from my home church, and they've been practicing building the beloved community since before I was born. They have taught me so much about discernment, strategy, and how to use my energy efficiently. So many of us have been blessed with the opportunity to be mentored by experienced campaigners, myself included. Are you being called to share your experience with others? Are you being called to listen to the voices of experience? We all have more to learn. Our beloved differences are how we weave the beloved community together. Can we imagine how our skills complement each other as a Dungeons and Dragons party? What role do you see yourself playing? Share it in the chat if you want to. And who are your people? Who is on your team? Did your imagination wake up and think of some people when you heard these descriptions? Let people know if they're making a difference in your life. Let people know how you see them. And maybe it will begin a conversation about how we can keep building the beloved community together.
Please help me close this service now. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and share with all the world. We hope that you will join us next Sunday for a Holston Valley UU Church tradition, the Festivals of Light. This service is a candle in the dark for each of us. As the light grows, so do we. Bring a candle and come see what it's all about. Pancakes and Jam is another tradition that is quickly approaching. There's more information about how to share your talents for this very special celebration on the events page of our website. If you'd like to connect with the diversity of faiths in the Tri-Cities, our local chapter of the United Religions Initiative is offering a grief and gratitude gathering today at 3 p.m. on Zoom. And you can find more information on the events page of our website. And don't forget that the Caring team is here for you. If you need support, reach out to caring@hvuuc.org.
As we've been talking about the courage of the social justice warrior, I found that my courage is calling me to do something. I'm going to show up in support of Matthew Hahn, the Kingsport educator who was fired for teaching about white privilege during his contemporary issues class. The Sullivan County Board of Education meeting is next Tuesday, December 14th at 4:30 p.m. and his supporters are going to be there to show that he is not alone. In fact, I just got news that we're being asked to wear blue in his support if we go. If you want to come with me and some other members of your community here, email me at minister@hvuuc.org so that we can talk about the possibility of carpooling. I normally don't see myself as much of a social justice warrior, but it's time for me to tap into my courage and show up to support Matthew Hahn. And it is my deep hope that however you are inspired to bring more love and justice into this world, that you will find what you need. If you are a warrior, I wish for you great courage. If you are a cleric, I wish for you great compassion. If you are a bard, I wish for you great inspiration. If you are a druid, I wish for you great connection. If you are a wizard, I wish for you great resources. If you are a rogue, I wish for you great cleverness. If you are a mage, I wish for you great vision. If you are a paladin, I wish for you great resilience. And whatever else you are, I hope you will count yourself as part of this beloved community, working together, finding power in our diversity. May we find our role and the courage to play it. Amen and blessed be, and yay, church.
Puff the magic dragon lived by the sea, and frolicked in the autumn mist in a land called Honolulu. Little Jackie Paper loved that rascal Puff and brought him strings and sealing wax and other fancy stuff. Together they would travel on a boat with billowed sail. Jackie kept a lookout, perched on Puff's gigantic tail. Noble kings and princes would bow whene'er they came. Pirate ships would lower their flag when Puff roared out his name. A dragon lives forever, but not so little boys. Painted wings and giant rings make way for other toys. One gray night it happened, Jackie Paper came no more. And Puff, that mighty dragon, he ceased his fearless roar. His head was bent in sorrow, green scales fell like rain. Puff no longer went to play along the cherry lane. Without his lifelong friend, Puff could not be brave. So Puff, that mighty dragon, sadly slipped into his cave. Oh, Puff, that sad old dragon, would soon become enthralled when grown-up Jackie and all his friends found a role-playing game for all, where heroes craft a story featuring dragons of all types. And Puff was called to join the game. He played a role each night. Oh, Puff, the magic dragon, was happy to belong, to help the party fight for right, to stop evil, weak or strong. Puff, the magic dragon, lived by the sea and joined his friends all times of year in the game of D&D.